All right. Well, good morning, Alice. Thanks for joining me this morning. We got a lot to go over in this update podcast. It is no news that the Trump administration is attacking, once again, legal immigration. We were all promised, or those who voted for him were promised, that he was only going to go after those who were not doing it the right way. And you and I both knew that that was a total lie. We're going to try not to cuss today because I feel like cussing, and I know that that is not going to be acceptable. So I'm going to have you hold my hand and walk us through these changes. Because yet again, last week we saw another attack on legal immigration. We're talking laws that have been in the books for decades. Legal pathways are now being called loopholes. And we want to make sure that this message gets out because it's important to those who don't understand immigration law, because immigration law is very complicated and it is a very challenging problem to solve right now. And I get that, but it's really important that people understand that there are laws in place that Congress has put into place that cannot be changed just by a president saying, we don't want to do it this way. But there are also policies that can be announced and eventually required to be followed that then have to be challenged in court because they do not match up with the law. So we're going to talk today. We want to kind of spell this out as plainly as we can. There's a lot of misinformation going around. There's a lot of fear coming up around this because this is going to impact so many people potentially. So I want you to first break down to us, what does the law say about adjustment of status? What does that mean? And what does the law give to immigrants regarding adjustment of status?
Great. So yeah, a lot to dive into today, but adjustment of status is what we're really focused on right now. That's the memo that was released last week. And adjustment of status is when someone who is inside the United States wants to become a lawful permanent resident. There are certain areas of the law that are codified and adopted and final that apply to who is eligible for adjustment of status, who can change to become a lawful permanent resident while they're in the United States. And that's codified in several places in the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's in the US Code. And so these are laws that are final and must be adopted. And like you said, a policy is not going to override the law. So someone who's present in the United States who entered with a visa or entered lawfully, either with a visa or they were paroled. Generally, if they have the basis on which to adjust their status to that of a lawful permanent resident, is eligible under the law. And obviously, there are a lot of different categories. There's a lot of people that are in various situations. And so, before we get started, as you always say, as we always tell people, look, we're not giving everybody legal advice on your situation. We're trying to give some overarching information. But no matter what you hear, it's always best to talk to an immigration attorney about your case specifically. We need to know what your status is, what your immigration history is, what basis on which you are seeking to adjust status. And that will help us determine which law actually applies to you so we can know that we are applying the right law, the right rules, and filing the right applications for you.
Mhm. So tell us now, what did that memo say exactly? Because I know you've read it, I know you've dissected it. Tell us what it said.
Yes. So last week on May 21st, there was a policy memo issued by USCIS. Um, and essentially, what it is saying is that adjustment of status is discretionary. That is not technically new information, but the language in the memo is very incendiary. And The intention behind the memo is very clear. The intention of the memo is to attack the lawful pathway of adjustment of status. It is clear that this policy is putting in place a big red flag warning that, hey, we don't want to do this. We don't want to follow the law. We don't want to grant people adjustment of status, even though the law tells us to. So we've issued this policy memorandum saying it is discretionary, and we're intentionally notifying our adjudicating officers with USCIS that they have to prove that an application is worthy of a positive exercise of discretion and has to essentially justify anytime they want to grant someone's application for adjustment of status. This is a really big policy shift. And there's a lot, in my opinion, there's a lot of issues with this policy memorandum. The fact that it cites super old law from the 70s and 80s, and the law has changed a lot since then. There's just a lot of things about this memo that are facially unsound legally, and it is a big shift from actual practice and procedure based on the way the law has existed for decades. Hey, Abby, I can't hear you at all.
Sorry, I had my
There we
mic
go.
muted there. Discretion is something we talk about frequently, and this is not something that's new. If we could put a definition on this, I don't know what the right definition, but the way I usually say it is that an officer has the right to look at good factors versus negative factors and kind of do a weighing between the two, which is also what immigration judges do. They have a very broad discretion to do that. And so this is not really something new that they're announcing. Officers have always had discretion, but now the memo, as I read it, and as we were talking about it earlier, it basically allows an officer to look negatively at the fact that someone came to the U.S., stayed for a certain period of time, and then adjusted their status, which has always been allowed, right? Which is something that I've always been so upset about, that certain countries, it's easy to get a tourist visa and come here legally. And those people have always been seen as like, well, they're doing it the legal way. They're coming here with a visa. Whereas other countries, it's challenging to get a visa from there and they can't. And so they end up coming without a visa. And then they are two different situations where one can adjust status and the other one who entered without a visa cannot. And it always felt very unfair. But now it's very interesting that those ones who were able to adjust status before that will now be a negative factor that the officer can potentially look at to decide whether to grant permanent residency. So in practice, like those who have either already filed or getting ready to file, what is this change going to look like for them? What are we recommending to people right now after this policy change?
So for people who already have cases pending, if you filed on your own without an attorney, now may be the time that you get an attorney. And there are some times, and we even tell people this who call us, and I know it's not self-serving, but there are some applications in immigration where you probably don't need an attorney. It's always a good idea to have one. But there are sometimes that, minor applications or renewals, there are sometimes that people can do those things on their own. But when you're talking about adjustment of status, you're talking about remaining in the United States with your family, and I'm focusing primarily on family-based immigration adjustments. But when you're talking about filing an application that will allow you to remain safely and securely and without fear with your family, now may be the time to hire an attorney if you did not already have one. If you do have an attorney, reach out to the attorney. Make sure that they're aware of the memo. I'm pretty sure we all are. All of us immigration attorneys, We're all pretty much aware of the policy memo, and we are doing case-by-case assessments on our clients' cases that are pending. I do think that we are going to, and we're hearing from colleagues already, that there will be probably some additional questions that are asked at the interview related to how they entered the United States, why they overstayed their visa, if they could consular process, things like that. There may be additional questions. And then also weighing additional equities. So it may be worth it to file some supplemental evidence, either with a case that's already pending or with a new case as people are preparing to file. It may be worth considering filing some additional positive equity factors. So, talk to your attorney or get an attorney. Now is definitely the time to protect your rights and to present a strong application.
Yes, definitely. And so the alternative route besides adjustment of status, and what this memo is kind of basically encouraging or insisting that people do now, is consular processing. And so some people might say, well, what's the big deal? They should just do it that way then. Obviously, we've already said, like, the big deal is that the law allows for people to adjust status in the US. You've already talked about, being together with your family, but what are some other consequences that people might not know about if they choose to consular process? Maybe they're afraid to do an adjustment of status. They're afraid of it being denied, because what we know is that every case that's denied is being sent to an immigration judge. So it's going to get a lot more complicated if people's cases for adjustment of status are denied. But what is the alternative, the potential consequences of leaving in consular processing?
Yeah, and that's a great question that I think most Americans do not understand, especially a lot of the MAGA people that are still like, oh, Trump is just trying to enforce the law. This isn't new. Well, it actually is really new. And that's something I try to really respectfully share with people is, you know, the way the law is written and the way the policies are in place is someone who is married to a United States citizen or who is the parent of an adult US citizen. Or the child of a US citizen or permanent resident. There are certain categories called immediate relatives, and that's the spouse, parent, or child of a United States citizen. Those people, because of their close relationship to a United States citizen, because our laws value and recognize that close relationship as being super sacred and worthy of protection and worthy of maintaining that family relationship, there are certain exceptions that exist for immediate relatives. And that means people who overstayed their visas or maybe worked without permission, those grounds of an inadmissibility are automatically waived. Okay, people who have to consular process, they may trigger certain grounds of inadmissibility based on their unlawful presence or some other, in administrative infraction that triggers an inadmissibility ground for which they may or may not be able to get a waiver, which means leaving the United States triggers a ground of inadmissibility, and then they can't come back. It's not possible to come back. And so the law is written to create and recognize this sacrosanct relationship. And so to now say we're going to do away with policies that protect that, which is the intent of the law, is really going around the law. It's disrespecting the intent of the law, and it is negatively impacting United States citizens and their families. And it is causing lasting negative impact on children that are growing up and being framed with a frame of mind that the US screwed me over. The US isn't great. And these are the people we want to protect. That's why the law is written the way that it is written, is to allow for adjustment of status in the United States, to protect these relationships, to protect these families, to recognize the value and importance of these families in our communities, and to not screw them over by forcing them to leave, trigger grounds of inadmissibility, and then make it impossible for them to come back. So I know I got off a little on a tangent on my high horse there, but I know you're with me. It's the passion for what we do and the advocacy for our clients. These are good people and good families that we're representing. These are people that have been here for a while. These are people that are positively contributing to our communities. Most of the people we represent do not have criminal histories, do not have any of these negative factors. Their only infractions are these administrative issues that we already have policies, procedures in place to waive based on our recognition that this family relationship is so important.
You are preaching to the choir. So
I know.
preach it.
I know.
Yeah, it's just incredible the ways that, the ways that things have been twisted, and how the promises of Trump and his campaign promises of getting rid of all of these horrible rapists and murderers and and the reality is there were very few. There were very, very few. And so now, to increase their numbers and make them look good, they've gone after people who have done things legally. We've seen people, getting detained at court, the ones who are actually showing up and going to court, getting detained at court. We've seen kids' cases being attacked, the most vulnerable cases, humanitarian cases being attacked. Now the legal pathways are being called loopholes. It's crazy making. It's ridiculous. And of course, these things are going to be fought in court. The government's going to waste tons of money, defending these policies, these illegal policies. There's going to be many people caught in the crossfire. There will be even more cases heading to immigration court. We're talking about like the backlog of these cases. They just keep doing things that are going to create even more cases, make it more complicated, more expensive, more money from the government to defend these cases. And it does not make any sense. Please make it make sense.
I can't make it make sense. And not to mention, and I always have to plug our Afghan allies because that is so near and dear to my heart. How many Afghans, we have just completely set by the wayside in this administration. I mean, these are people who fought with American soldiers and saved American lives, and they have just repeatedly been screwed over. But man, this administration believes that if you're a white South African, you're worth protecting, and pretty much nobody else. And that's a really, really hard thing to try to explain, not to mention the travel ban lists and, all of the hurdles. You talk about consular processing. I didn't even mention that. But for some people, consular processing is not an issue right now because Trump has these arbitrary lists saying if you were born in or are a citizen of these lists of countries, we don't want you. You can't get a visa the right way, the wrong way, anyway. We don't want you here. And it doesn't matter what you do. There is no case by case analysis. There is no, review of an application. There is no consideration for people who are married to United States citizens or who have been here forever. There's just no consideration for the actual merits or equities of some people's applications. So to require people to consular process is really the kiss of death for a lot of our families. And, I say all this, Abby, and I know we had this conversation yesterday with our staff as well, is I still maybe naively hold out a degree of hope that this will not be as catastrophic as I think a lot of people are out there making it seem to be. Yes, the language is incendiary. Yes, we can read between the lines that the intent is to erode these lawful pathways. But at the same time, like we mentioned before, discretion is not new. This has always been the case. And I think what's shifted is kind of the burden of proof, right? It used to be that it was considered positive equities and worthy of a positive exercise of discretion when you were adjusting status as an immediate relative family member. And now they're saying, yeah, that may be one thing, but we're going to look at all these other things too. So I think, for our people who haven't filed yet, or cases, people that are considering, I don't necessarily think that this is the end of adjustment of status. I do think that we are going to have to do more in our initial applications and evidence. We're going to have to provide more evidence of equities, more a positive show of good moral character is what, the term is for other applications. But we want to show as many positive things as possible and really prove that, hey, our clients are deserving of discretion. And ties to US citizens and lawful permanent residents is still considered a positive tie. Long-standing history in the United States is a positive equity. Job history, letters of community impact, letters from your employer, proof of volunteering, membership in religious organizations. There are a lot of ways that people can gather evidence of positive equities to overcome these things. I just think this memo is outlining it's not going to be as automatic as it has been in the past.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting the differences between consular processing and adjustment of status. I just want to make it really clear for those that might have missed it. There is no appeal process for a
Oh yeah,
denied consular process case. So all of the protections that someone has in the US, the constitutional right to due process,
right.
which means if an adjustment of status is denied and you're put into removal proceedings, you have, a hearing before the immigration judge. If that judge doesn't side with you, you have an appeals process. None of that exists outside of our
Yes.
borders. And so that is also another sneaky reason why they're like, oh, now you're going to have to consular process. Well, that is really convenient that you've now put someone outside the US away from their family in a country that many times they haven't been to since they were, babies or whatever.
Right.
Very problematic. And there's not going to be a way for them to get a just decision. It could just be an arbitrary, we don't like your country and you are banned for right now and come back and never. So yeah,
Absolutely.
big, big, big consequences. With that said, there are times where we do advise our clients like consular processing might be safer for your situation. So it goes back to the initial commentary that you must talk with an immigration attorney. You must, each case is so unique and different, and that you might not even be eligible for adjustment of status. There are some people who go to immigration attorneys who don't know what they're doing, or immigration attorneys who are maybe not giving them great advice, and they file things that they are not eligible for. And how are they going to know that they're not eligible for? They are trusting the person that's giving them advice. So it's so important that you get good advice from a reputable attorney. And I'm going to use that as a segue because there was big news this week, last week and this week, big news. We're not going to talk about names, but this is how do you know that someone is a reputable attorney? Someone is going to give you right advice. It might not necessarily how do I say this? Just because someone has a big firm and has a big presence on social media and is saying all kinds of wonderful things and is getting wonderful results for many people, that does not mean that you can automatically trust that they will be able to handle your case. So the news that I'm alluding to is that a big firm out of Washington, the head attorney of that firm who grew her firm, really did help a lot of people, but also harm a lot of people along the way. She has now stepped down from the practice of law. This is big, big news in the immigration world. A lot of clients are going to be affected. A lot of her clients have actually sued her now, have joined together to sue because they realized that applications were filed on their behalf that they did not know what those applications contained. They basically their signature was taken off of a piece of paper and cut and pasted onto forms and documents that they did not know what was in there. So let's just review. We've talked about this a lot. What are some things that people should be looking for? Some red flags, some green flag, what are the things that people should be watching for? I feel I'm afraid that with this news coming out, that people are going to be even more afraid to start something. And I want people to be careful, but at the same time, I want people to still take action. And so how can people be assured that they are working with a firm that is like actually going to be able to help them and not harm them?
Yeah, these are great questions. And, you know, unfortunately, the idea of bad lawyers out there is not new. There are bad lawyers out there, and there are bad immigration lawyers out there, as we have recently seen, and there are lawyers out there who have made really bad choices, not only for their clients, but for themselves. And they have poorly represented the bar, they've poorly represented their clients, and their bad practice of law, unfortunately, negatively impacts the whole, right? If you've got an attorney who's specializing in fraudulent applications of a certain type, well, the government finds out about it, and then the government's going to look with extra scrutiny on all applications of that type. So it really diminishes the ability for these valid, lawful claims across the board, and that's really tough. When you're looking for an attorney, I have always told people, look, get a second opinion. Don't just take me at my word. You don't know me from Adam. I know what I'm talking about, but you don't know me, right? Like, go and interview two, three, four lawyers. Find who you fit with. Don't just trust the person that tells you what you want to hear. One thing that my staff, when we talk about it, one thing that I say all the time, and that my staff laughs at me about because I do say it all the time, is when I talk to people, I very frequently say, look, I am going to respect you enough to tell you the truth, not necessarily what you want to hear, because I am treating people like my family. If this were my family, I would rather somebody tell me the truth and have it be really hard, bad news than to tell me a lie and me not know just because they think it makes me feel better in the moment, but it's going to negatively impact me in the future. The information that we are dealing with and the options and legal options and forms of relief, we're talking about families. It's not just a piece of paper, it's not just a document, it's really impacting families. And so I am treating my clients the way I would want somebody to treat me and my family. And sometimes that means I have to tell my clients, look, I'm sorry, we don't have any options for you. The law does not provide an option for your situation. I'm not judging you for it. I'm just informing you this is where you stand legally. And to be honest, I've had people walk away from that conversation, where I can't provide them a solution, very grateful because I told them the truth. And now they know, and they're able to talk with their families and they're able to make decisions on, hey, look, this is where we are. This is the hard reality. What are we going to do about it? But it's their decision as a family. So interview a bunch of lawyers, you know, ask questions, do research, but then ask questions. When I say do research, research reputable sources, and TikTok isn't always one of them. There's a lot of people out there that put TikToks out. I know we put TikToks out sometimes too. There's nothing wrong with TikTok, nothing wrong with getting information from lawyers on social media, but just verify it. Look it up, get a second opinion, make sure that what you're hearing is actually true, but then also make sure you're talking to someone about your case. Everybody's case is different, everybody's facts are different. And talking with an experienced lawyer whose practice focuses on immigration, they're not doing immigration on the side. Immigration is way too complex for somebody to have a family law practice and then, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do your green card application. They may be very well intentioned, but immigration law is way too complicated. Find somebody whose practice focuses on immigration, or that's one of their primary one or two areas of practice, that they really have experience doing this. There's somebody who's done this for a while, has experience with your type of situation. Ask questions, get to the bottom of it, and then get a second opinion and find the right fit for yourself and find the right fit for your family. But definitely don't just take the best offer because it's the best offer. You want to find the best offer for you that's within the law. And that is one thing that here at Molina Immigration, we're not going to create an option for you. We're not going to fabricate a solution for you. We're going to listen to you. We're going to get the facts about you. And then we're going to give you options and an assessment based on your situation. And if that includes a lawful immigration pathway, we would love to be there and help you do that. But if it doesn't, we're going to respect you enough to tell you the truth.
Absolutely. Well said. Um, I don't want to victim blame here, and I don't want to minimize the ways that these clients were taken advantage of. I think that the attorney definitely failed to explain what was in these applications and failed to, follow the law in many ways. But I have over the years, working with immigrants now for 26 years, 16 as an attorney, I have always been surprised when people come to me and, you mentioned the people that are grateful for the truth. There are some people who don't want to hear the truth. And there are some people who've been angry with me and said, well, on social media, they said I can do it this way. You just don't know what you're doing. You're not willing to help me. I'm going to go with this person. And I try to explain why that is not a good idea, why that's not going to work. And they don't want to hear it. And so like I said, I don't want to victim blame because definitely people have been taken advantage of here, but it is so important to stop and consider, get those different opinions. And if five people are telling you can't, and then there's one that says, yes, give us $15,000 and we can do it.
Right.
Maybe you might want to consider that those other five people might be the ones that are right. And maybe that one person that found this mysterious option for you, this miraculous option, maybe that person is trying to take advantage of you. So I don't want to dwell on this too much because it's very sad news. I'm hopeful that those who've been victimized by this attorney or others will be able to find an attorney that they can trust. I can only imagine it's like being in kind of an abusive relationship where how do you trust again? Like, how do you trust that the next attorney is not going to do the same thing? But in some cases, many of these clients are like the harm, the damage that's been done, it's irreparable. There's no going back for many of these people. So I'm hopeful that justice will be served, that, people will get some kind of compensation for the harm that they've been done. But I do want to just emphasize again, please, people, like get good advice, do your homework, do your research. Even ChatGPT can tell you Like, get on AI and confirm what an attorney's telling you. Don't use AI for your immigration case, but you can use it as confirmation, and ask people around you, people that have worked with an office. Most of our clients come from referrals, actually, our new clients. And I think that that's a good way to gauge, like, did the attorney explain to you your case? Did you feel like you got all your questions answered? Did you understand what it was you were filing? And I get that it's complicated, but if you don't even know what it was that you were filed, I've lost track of how many people have come to me and like, what did you file? Oh, I don't know. And you can tell that whatever was filed was probably not something legitimate. So we're going to go ahead and end this here. I want to thank you for joining me and talking through these complicated issues. I appreciate that you always break it down, and I just want to appreciate you for that. So thank you, everyone who's made it here to the end joining us. We will be back hopefully soon with some better news, and just keep fighting, keep the good hope, keep the faith, and we will keep serving immigrants as best we can. Thank you, everyone.